Vocês receberam por e-mail a apresentação mais formal da professora Ilana Löwy. A Ilana, ela trabalha sobre o Brasil, no Brasil há muitos anos. Tem um livro que é referência nessa área dos estudos sociais da história da ciência do Brasil, que é sobre a febre amarela, que já está em português, ditado pela Fiocruz. Nós temos o prazer também de colaborar com o IMS e o CERMES há muitos anos, desde a década de 80, com diferentes pesquisas. Então, com relação aos títulos, vocês têm lá, eu não tenho aqui impresso, mas apenas para dizer que ela é uma professora amiga convidada, que vai falar, então, do tema que circulou no texto também. Então, a Ilana fala português, francês, inglês, mas a gente falou para ela falar em inglês. Agora, vou perguntar para ela.
Francisco tem razão, porque meu português é tão ruim que não vale a pena. I'll speak in English. Seemingly it's good for your exercise. Okay, great. Okay, so what I'm going to talk today, it's what I call the irresistible geneticization of the fetus. How fetuses became geneticized. So there is a whole discourse about saying that the history of, because of the development of prenatal diagnosis, I'm going to give you a chronography soon, but they say that the development of prenatal diagnosis led to the discovery of the fetus. This is absolutely not true. The fetus was discovered much, much earlier, and in fact, embryology, the science of studying the fetuses, was one of the foundation of the modern biology. And including the human fetus was very extensively studied in the 19th and early 20th century. What did change, and there was a quite radical change, was the discovery of the living fetus. All the fetuses that were studied before the 1970s were dead. And only what was a truly radical change was the possibility to study the fetus when the fetus was alive, which means, in practice, not in a country like Brazil, that there was a possibility, in a country like Brazil, to whoever has the means to do it, that there was a possibility, in very rare cases of intervention on the fetus, and in much more frequent cases, when there were problems with the fetus, the woman had the possibility to have an abortion and not to give birth to severely handicapped fetus. And this was the big innovation, that you can know things about the future child before the child was born, which was, of course, in the huge majority of the cases, mean that everything is fine. But if not everything was fine, you could. Okay. This doesn't work at this. Knowing something about the future child isn't, of course, a very, very old knowledge. Breeders of animals from the Bible, in Jacob and so on, know how to select animals. And in human, you have the pedigree, which was, of course, extremely important. Okay, I can do it with this. You have some aristocratic family, and of course genealogy was very important for question of heritage, and, lineage, especially rich family, but it was also important as a means of selection, because of course families wanted to secure a healthy offspring, and therefore were very careful to choose partners. When they arrange marriages and so on, it was even in lower classes to be sure that the family is free from hereditary taint. So there was a technique of this kind of genealogical technique was transformed in the 20th century into traditional genetic technique, which means that you have the lineage, and if you have somebody with disease, you can trace. So it was the exact transposition, and it was precisely the goal was to try to predict what kind of offspring people will have and avoid birth of what they call tainted offspring genetically. Okay, now what I'm going to see, I'm working on prenatal diagnosis for quite a long time, and this was quite a long, thank you, this is quite a long term period, and it was a collective period, and what I am slightly irritated is by the fact that there is a lot of public debates on non-existing technology. There is a lot of discussion about designer baby, how we are going to have a brave new world with brave new babies, and we'll make cloning, and people could be able to select the color of eyes, and we'll abort the child if we wouldn't have all kind, I don't know, musical talents, or will be too tall or too short, or be homosexual or be heterosexual or whatever. I mean, this is completely, extremely, first of all, most of this technique doesn't exist. I think that I'm not sure at all that they will ever exist. And those who do it, it does exist, are plain plantatory diagnosis when you make in vitro fertilization and you select for trait, is either because there is a severe genetic disease in the family, or more frequently, and that is not spoken about, it's just to make the IVF work. There are a lot of women that have to this in vitro fertilization because they cannot conceive naturally, because they have a genetic problem, usually a translocation, which means they have spontaneous abortion extremely frequently. And because of this, and they just cannot have children naturally. So they go to in vitro fertilization and preselection of embryos to be just able to carry a child to term. So it's not at all any brave word. They don't want to select a wonderful baby. They just want to select a baby that will survive, which is a very, very different story. So I think you have a lot of debate on this. What you don't have a debate, or very little debate, in what is really going on with like 90% of women in a Western country, and I would say quite a lot in Brazil too, or in more limited way, because of the large range of diffusion of obstetrical ultrasound. You know, women go for 20 reales and get some kind of ultrasound to see if the baby is fine, and this is already a diagnostic technique. It's the same, by the way, it's a very, very good book by Tina Gammelt, an anthropologist, a Dutch anthropologist, who wrote about Vietnam, and she shows in Vietnam who are making incredible amount of use of ultrasound in spite of the fact it's a very poor country. So it's not necessarily only in rich countries, although the modalities of prenatal diagnosis are not the same. So I'm just giving you some number about France, because France, okay, it's not about, well, I'm going to data about France, by the way, among other things, because France is one of the few countries that you have good data. I was very amazed. United States, of course, no way you'll have data, because of the sensibility of the abortion question. There is very, very little data on the United States. No official. There are Causas Permanentes. This is an insurance company in California. They have data, but they refuse to give them because it's too sensitive. So no, it's very difficult. But for example, in England, when you have a national health service, you also don't have good data, because most of very complicated treatment, but because abortion without any kind of justification is possible until 24 weeks. Many women who abort for fetal indication, they don't want to speak about it. They don't want to get into trouble, and they say, because there is a pressure, and they say that they do it because they don't want the child. So there are no good data in There are not good data in Germany because in many cases, again, there's a social pressure against abortion for fetal indication. Women do it. In fact, all the data that I know from Europe, from the Eurocard, from the European organization, show that there are no big difference among countries for the women who take diagnosis. There are differences in uptake of diagnosis. Countries like Holland, many women don't go to diagnosis. But if they do have a diagnosis, the rate of abortion for fetal malformation is about the same across Europe. But the rate of admitting it is very different. So it's quite interesting. But if you get data for France, you have about 1 million pregnancies per year, 1/5 and through abortion. The huge majority of the abortion is because the women don't want to be pregnant. I mean, it's a kind of completing, dealing with the failures of contraception or lack of contraception. She just, about 7,000 per year are what you call for fetal indication after diagnosis, which is not a lot. And of these 7,000, and these are quite complete data, because in France, because of the system, if you have abortion after 14 weeks, you have to go through a commission, and anyhow, they are relatively reliable data. The majority of those abortions are for a very severe fetal defect. The only problematic thing is Down syndrome. But really, all the others, I make quite a lot of ethnography, quite a lot of them would be cases that if the woman would not abort, have an earlier abortion, probably she will either have a late miscarriage, spontaneously, or the child will die immediately after birth. So I see that 25 to 30% are for genetic reasons, mainly for Down syndrome, not only, but mainly for Down, and for specific diseases, which is the most discussed thing, the genetic condition is 4%. It depends how you define, because if you define wide, large, it may be 6%, but not more. So I say the great majority of abortion are not for diseases in families, which is also important, yeah? No, the 200 are, those centos are induzidos. Espontâneos não pode contabilizar, porque a maioria de espontâneos são as 3 primeiros meses. Isso a mulheres não reportam, porque você não precisa fazer nada. Você tem uma estatística só quando a mulher vai ao hospital para acabar a aborto. A maioria delas, ela não vai ao hospital, ela não é hospitalizada, então é muito difícil de saber. Meramente, a grande maioria de abortos são espontâneos. Mas muito disso, a grávida, é muito difícil saber, porque se você registra a gravidez, já é estabelecida. Aborto. When you have a spontaneous abort very early, she will be not registered as being pregnant, you see. So this is very fluid area, and this is one of the things I'm going back to, because what will happen in the first trimester? The first trimester, until now, was kind of extremely gray zone. I'm not speaking about Brazil again, or Latin America, but in countries when abortion is legal, which is the majority of industrialized countries and majority of Asian countries, the first trimester until 14 weeks is a very gray zone, because you have high level of spontaneous abortion. Many women don't tell anybody, besides maybe the husband and so on, that they are pregnant. So you don't really know, and they don't go register the pregnancy until she is sure she is really pregnant. So this is exactly what's going to change a lot with diagnosis that will be possible in the first trimester. In majority, Christians are also special, but in Judaism and in Muslim religion, the pregnancy doesn't count until the 4th month. Woman is not considered pregnant for the religion, so early abortion is not forbidden by the religion because the woman is not really pregnant. So You have a very complicated. On the other hand, because of there is a very, very good thesis. There is a very good thesis of a young guy in Jesse Green-Olshenko, a young guy at Cambridge who worked with Nick Hopwood at Cambridge, and he wrote a really good thesis on the history of pregnancy testing, and he shows how pregnancy testing changed the meaning of what pregnancy is, because now many women learn that they are pregnant, and they learn that they aborted what they call chemical pregnancy. Yeah. Sim, sim, sim. Claro.
Me impressiona esses 20% de mulheres que abortam porque não querem ter filho. Engravidaram sem vontade. Imagino que esses dados estejam tendo em média. Será que eles são tratados assim? São mulheres de origem caucasiana, não sei qual? Será que existe dados sobre isso?
Eu disse que a França não tem estatísticas. Você conhece a França, não tem estatísticas raciais. A França é proibido de fazer estatísticas de origem.
Não, mas eu posso te perguntar, minha pergunta na verdade não é social, mas é socioeconômica. Eu acho muito difícil. Mulher francesa, 200 mil mulheres francesas não conseguem ter acesso ou entender o que é uma prática contraceptiva.
Não, isso é erro. A todo mundo, mesmo as feministas fazem esse erro como você. Não é verdade. Não, porque essa ideia que se a mulher tem acesso bom para a contracepção não precisa aborto, é uma loucura.
Não foi isso que eu falei, precisa aborto, mas é uma bem elevado, né?
Você pode ler a trabalhos de Nathalie Bajos e tudo isso, Michel Ferrand. Não, aborto, claro, no contraceptive works 100%, and very few human beings are very rational when they have sexual activities. It's not the domain of human activity where people are the most rational. I wouldn't really say. So I mean, it is the same for Scandinavian countries, 1 out of 5. When you have a homogeneous population, wonderful access to contraception, everything, in France.
Abortion is also a contraceptive practice.
Exactly, but it was always. It is exactly the error that some feminists, especially in the United States, do. They think that if you have good contraception and well-educated women, you have less abortion. But you have, instead of 1 of 3, you have 1 of 5. But you cannot reduce much more than this. If you look what happened in countries like Sweden, like Norway, like Finland, when you have, in France, women have, I think somebody put it, you maybe put it somewhere, that in Brazil, the pill after a pílula de dia seguinte, you have a big fight. In France, girls have access to pílula de dia seguinte through school nurses. They can go to pharmacy. If they're under 18, they can go to pharmacy and ask the pill. It was the law 10 years ago, and for free.
I'm sorry for insisting, but because I said that question, I think it's very interesting because it's the same rate as Brazil. Brazil is estimativa, estimates that 1 in 5.
Yeah, but the problem is in Brazil you have 2 different trends.
No.
It would have been more if access would have been free to abortion. So you have 2 contradictory trends. One is less women abort because it's illegal and they're afraid, and more women abort because they have no access to good contraception. So you end by the same number, but not for the same reason.
O próprio discurso médico estimulava a mulher a parar de usar com medo de não ficar infértil, o uso prolongado de pílula. Então tem uma questão sociocultural que é maior do que a questão da medicalização. Elas sabem, elas têm um conhecimento médico, mas ainda assim elas
Não, claro, você pode ver as francesas. A França fez a transição demográfica sua, que no Brasil foi dos anos 70, 80. A França foi a meio do século XIX. E a razão principal foi a transição demográfica que passou de 5 crianças para a mulher a 1 ou 2 para a mulher. É isso que você lê artigos sobre, por exemplo, a boletim de discussões da Academia de Medicina francesa ao fim do século XIX. Eles dizem tudo isso. As mulheres de classes populares, não de campesinos, mas das cidadinas, de obreiras, têm uma só criança e utilizam como técnica contraceptiva principal o aborto. Isso não é novo. Okay. So here you have very, very rapidly landmark in the history of BBA. Here is the it's bilirubin in the, what is the mistake, in Bevin test. Here you have the obstetrical ultrasound, chromosomes. This was the 59 that proved that the Down is abnormal number of chromosomes. And in fact, the prenatal diagnosis started in 1970. Prenatal diagnosis, amniocentesis and the examination of fetal cells. By the way, the major indication at that time was not Down syndrome, was not sex, was for biochemical problems, like Tay-Sachs, polysaccharide disease, metabolic diseases. And this was the reason. At the same time, abortion became accepted. The usual was the woman movement was one of the reasons, but one of the real reason that doctors became really concerned was because of the thalidomide disaster. It was extremely visible, and then there were a lot of women who came, and that was the shift in the perception of abortion, because before abortion was considered something that you didn't speak about, not important that every woman, 1 in 4 and 1 in 5 women has an abortion, but the image of abortion was that there was women who were immoral, who were lower classes, but thalidomide was not, and the rubella epidemics was not. So there were upper class women and middle who came and said, this happened to me and I don't want to give birth. So it became a lot of pressure on the medical profession to be able to have illegal abortion. By the way, this was more true in the States. In England and France, they were doing abortion for indication, but they would feel uneasy because it was illegal. Doctors were giving abortion, they were not. Anyhow, this is going fast. This is the beginning of ultrasound, which was not for prenatal diagnosis, by the way. It was in beginning to see that there are problems in pregnancy, like ectopic pregnancy, like placenta pravia. I mean, problems which are really risking pregnancy, not the fetus, but the pregnancy. But then they built more and more sophisticated machines, mainly, by the way, because of the development of computers. So they were able to have more and more sophisticated machines, and they were able to see the fetus. In the beginning, no. But what was really important at the beginning, they were able to make amniocentesis, I mean, to take the amniotic fluid with ultrasound. And this made a huge difference. Before, at the very early, amniocentesis was very risky technique. They have from 5 to 10% chances of have spontaneous abortion. And in fact, I look in the first series that was in Denmark in the 60s, and they have more than 5%. They seem to have like 1 out of 3 cases of spontaneous abortion, which was okay. Women agreed for this because there were women who, without amniocentesis, wanted to have an abortion. They have the woman was in hemophilia, and they say, if I don't know what the sex of the fetus have, I want an abortion. So they said it was either abortion or amniocentesis. So even if you have 1 out of 3 chances to lose the fetus, you still have 2 chances out of 3 to keep it. So it was better than that. So anyhow, with the development of amniocentesis, you have develop ultrasound, when you can see how the ultrasound needle goes to the amniotic fluid, the amniocentesis in mid-70s became much safer. They have only 1 to 2% of loss of fetuses. So then it became really generalized. And the main generalization was for Down syndrome. Because Down syndrome is much more frequent in older mothers. So they started over 40 and then over 35. And it's very interesting because at that point, it was not problematic. I mean, it was not problematic in the sense that everybody agreed that it's a good thing. It's a good thing to detect Down syndrome, it's a good thing to abort fetuses with Down syndrome, it's a good thing for the parents, it's a good thing for the states, and they were very explicit about it. Because they say people with Down syndrome are, once they were dying young, now they live until they're adults. They cost a lot because they all need, not all, but the majority of them need care. Some of them are very handicapped, which, by the way, today you don't speak at it at all. When I looked at the 19th century and early 20th century, everybody, all the researchers that were working on Down syndrome, all spoke about Down syndrome spectrum. Everybody spoke about that Down syndrome is not one thing, but it's a very large spectrum. Today, when you hear in Brazil, it's wonderful. Everybody speaks about angels. This is the dominant. You have even a thesis in your department on angels. I'm not going to quote it. Down syndrome and the perception of Down syndrome children and angels. Angelos. Como angel. You have a thesis in your department. No, about that they are seeking special, which is very nice, of course. Angels, are very nice. Everybody said, but nobody speaks anymore about the problem that Down syndrome is a very large spectrum, and some people with Down syndrome are quite fine, or can be quite fine, but some people are not fine at all, and you cannot know it ahead of time. You can know that your child will have 21, 3 chromosomes 21, but you don't know what that is. Yeah.
So some people detectare anche poco lo spettro adesso si incontrano.
Exactamente. Se você tem um discurso total que é verdade, porque once you have a discourse which was exactly the opposite, at least some French doctors were absolutely horrid. Were saying all these children are hopeless, nobody will learn anything. It was completely false, of course. The problem is it is spectrum, like autism spectrum, like any other spectrum. And you can predict, this was, Lionel Penrose was the greatest geneticist of, the generation before in England, and who studied Down syndrome. He has a lot of publication on this. Exactly, his big preoccupation was how we can know what will be the future of child with the Down syndrome, and we cannot. We are 6 years later, and we cannot. There is strictly no progress in prediction of what will be the consequences. So we have a real problem. And the real problem, that's what I'm going to tell, it's become much more difficult when you have much earlier possibility now of much earlier diagnosis. Because this is my argument I'm writing. I'm trying to finish my book on prenatal diagnosis. In fact, 2 books is very complicated. And this is the one thing that nobody speaks. It's not a diagnosis. It's in the sense that strict diagnosis, diagnosis of a risk, not a diagnosis. Nearly always, not always. If you have an anencephaly, okay, you know what you have. If you have a diagnosis of a missing hand, you know what you have. But the great majority of diagnoses today are diagnoses of risk, and not diagnosis of a condition. You know what is the range, but you don't know what will happen with this specific child. So it makes a very different story. The head of college, which just published a book which I recommend. It's Robert Aronovich, which called Risky Medicine. It just came out in Chicago University Press. And he just have a really nice argument Robbie. It's saying that medicine today, it's nearly always become moved mainly to risk medicine. You have less and less clinical medicine for already existing diseases and more risk medicine. It doesn't say, okay, if you break a limb, you'll have a medicine of symptoms, or if you have trauma medicine of symptoms. If you have an acute disease, if you get a pneumonia, you get a medicine of symptoms. But most of the disease today is medicine of risk and not medicine of symptoms. And prenatal diagnosis is diagnosis of risk, not of symptoms. Okay. So this was 73. They already said there was Stan and Sasser. From those who know, were the pioneers. The first book of social epidemiology was the book of Sasser book. They were really the pioneers, extremely progressive people. But they were for generalization of screening for those saying this is unfair. The rich can have it and the poor cannot. And this is unfair, so we have to generalize it to everybody. By the way, until today it's true, and nobody speaks about it. The numbers in France, they have a good coverage, but in England they have poor coverage. So they say maybe poor women don't select, and every sociological study disproves it. There is about 10% of women, and that should be absolutely respected, of course, who don't want to test and who are, it's independent from class. They can be religious, they can be immigrant, whatever, but they can be also upper class. But there is the majority of women who have Down syndrome children didn't select it, and they have less access. And it's true today. So it's complicated. Okay, so this is screening. What today we make, they moved from, once they are proposing screening for Down, all women over 35 should have amniocentesis. But it's costly and it's dangerous. You still have 1% or 2% risk. So they move to serum markers. You have something in blood that can say that you are at higher risk of Down. Okay, in Brazil you have it, but only in private clinics. You don't have it all in public sector, because why do you have it? Abortion is illegal. But in most of the Western countries, they propose some kind of serum test. And if you have a higher results, and they combine it with early ultrasound, then they propose you amniocentesis. And it's not more, now they don't propose amniocentesis to all the older women, but for all women at risk. So it became safer, and you have less. You have the other thing is measuring the nuchal translucency, the distance between the neck, fetal neck, and if there is a high risk of Down, you have accumulation of liquid. So you have all kinds of sophisticated data. By the way, it became a big business, because it's also one of the things that don't speak, but prenatal diagnosis, of course, if you make a diagnosis for all the pregnant women, it's quite a lot of women and quite a lot of money who people who produce instrument, reagents, and so on. So it's a really big market, which is one of the important things, especially with the new technique. Those techniques were not market-driven. They were public health-driven, and the marketing came later. And they used techniques that were used for something else, especially for serum markers. They used the standard technique to blood tests, which were developed for something else, monoclonal antibodies, whatever. But when they started to do, the new techniques are all market-driven. We'll get there. So you have, as you say, a risk number. Pregnant women are supposed to be a rational manager of fetal risk. They get a number, the risk is so and so, and then you have to decide what you do with the number. Would you go to future testing or no? So women are supposed to be, to take the decision, and and the problem is that it's one of my arguments. It's, in fact, women are very often blamed whatever they do. Whatever they do is always wrong, normal. If they decide to take risk, they give birth to child that will be costly for the health system and difficult and so so on. If they decide to have a selective abortion, they're horrid eugenists and they're selfish because they don't want to take care of them. So I mean, whatever they do is wrong. It's very easy. You cannot be right, probably. Somebody will attack you. But what's happened, it's when abortion is legal, in some ways, you transform what you call prevention of risk of disability into a private management of public health system problem. Because you say, woman, you can choose. It's your choice. It's your choice, but it's the state that pays. So in fact, it's something that nobody wants to talk about. Today, I saw for the first time European directive that is daring to speak about it. And they say, yes, we should speak about it. But basically, they don't want. Okay. So this I spoke about it, that you have testing for a risk, and they tell a woman, oh, madam, do you want to know if your baby is all right? And the woman will say, no, I don't want to know if my baby is all right. And especially for ultrasound, everybody wants to know if the baby is all right. And then you start a huge diagnostic odyssey. And it is the same thing I found it's in cancer and so on. You have a huge gap. You have an extremely sophisticated diagnostic method, both biochemical and genetic and medical imagery. You have an extremely crude solution. There is very little you have to know. Everybody's paying about fetal chemotherapy and fetal surgery and so on. It's a minimal number of cases. In the huge majority of cases, you cannot do anything. There are some cases, yes, but especially with heart defects, that what you can do, and this you can do, if you know it ahead of time, the defect is not lethal, you can be sure that the woman will give birth, not in some small hospital in provinces, but in a big hospital with good pediatric cardiology, and the child can be operated immediately after. So you have some number of cases in which prenatal diagnosis can make a difference and can ensure diaphragmic hernia. This is another case. You have something that you don't have the diaphragm, and the lungs are the compression of the volume of the lungs because of the intestine. Anyhow, there are cases, large gastroschisis, that it's better to know ahead of time so the child after birth can have immediate surgery, which improve the chances of survival. But again, this is a very small percentage of cases. In the majority of cases, say, okay, the woman again, she's supposed to decide. You should decide what you do next, which is very, very difficult. And they say, and always, every article you see about future, not every, but each time it's a presidential address or something like this, the president of the Society of Fetal Medicine is saying, next year, next 10 years, we will have fetal therapy, so we don't need selective abortion anymore. And they repeat it very religiously from the 1960s on. Next year, next 5 years, we'll have fetal therapy. Maybe they will have, I hope they will have, but for the moment, there is very little about it. So, okay, this is what I'm saying very rapidly. What's happening with women who have amniocentesis? They have amniocentesis for Down, which is saying the woman, she decided, if I have a Down syndrome child, I'll have an abortion. And the karyotype came, I don't have Down syndrome child, I have Turner syndrome child, which is much less severe condition. But then she has to decide what to do next. So that you call the bola de nieve, the snowball effect of testing. Until now, it was not very frequent, because not so many women have amniocentesis. With the new rules of serum testing in France, they have about 5% pregnant women who have amniocentesis. Of those who have amniocentesis, of course, only very little of them, because not that frequent condition, have Turner syndrome. So the majority of Turner syndrome, and the next will be Klinefelter syndrome. The problem with Turner and Klinefelter, they are infertile. They have some physiological problem. It's again a risk factor, but risk which is much lower than risk of Down. But some have quite severe learning problems. Some have quite severe, especially with terminal health problem, heart disease, thyroid problems. But some have no problems or very little problems. So again, it's what you do when you know that the child can have problems, less severe than normal, but can be absolutely okay or near absolutely okay. And in the kind of Down syndrome, the child will always have some kind of handicap. But in Turner syndrome, there are women with Turner syndrome who are university professors, who are, I don't know, you have to be very intelligent to be university professor, but I mean, at least you have to have average IQ, probably. No, I mean, you can have absolutely normal life. The only thing you probably cannot is to have children. And even this is possible with the oocyte, with the gift of oocyte. So, Klinefelter is even worse. Klinefelter, a lot of people with Klinefelter even don't know that they have Klinefelter. Because if you see Turner syndrome, you can see usually before birth. They have what you call cystic hygroma, very big liquid accumulation, and the babies look different. So many babies of Turner you can see at birth, but Klinefelter you see nothing. And many of those men with Klinefelter only learn that they have Klinefelter either as teenagers, because their puberty is delayed, or many of them only when they go to infertility clinics. They want to have children, and then they cannot have because they are infertile, and then they do chromosomal testing, and then they learn that they have Klinefelter. Wonderful. So you can say if it's only this problem, no problem. But it's not so simple, because Klinefelter syndrome, for example, is linked with higher percentage of autism syndrome. So they have a higher risk of psychiatric problems and higher risk of autism. So it's not zero, and they are considered to have some learning disability, which also can be higher or lower. You don't have many professors with Klinefelter. So you have, again, you have a risk of something, but how high, and how you can know, and what you do. It became a quite impossible problem, as I say. In the 1960s, it was a big scandal, because there was this scandal. They supposed that people with Klinefelter have more problem with criminal behavior. They found more of them in prisons, and they found more of them in psychiatric prisons. And it's true, they find more. I listened to Pat Jacobs, who found out this, and she was furious that people contested her, because he said it is a real finding, and it's true. It's a real finding, because those people have lower than average IQ. They are very big, and if you are very big and strong, and you are not terribly smart, and you have some behavioral problem, you can run in more trouble. So statistically, yes, but of course it's completely not true that the majority of them have that problem, majority don't. So again, recently you have more research about it. It became a marker for autism syndrome spectrum, but again, it's a marker. You have more, you have 3 times more, maybe 5 times more. What you do with it. And today, all the experts agree it's good to have early Klinefelter diagnosis, because if you treat those children early by hormones and by special education, the outcomes are better. But the problem is the outcomes are better of what? The outcomes are better than those children with Klinefelter who have syndrome and were not treated. But those who never have syndrome, you don't know how the outcome would have been, because you never see them. You never know anything about them, because they are invisible, because they think that they are normal. So you don't have in all these studies, you don't have a baseline, because those who do well are invisible for the medical system. So I think you cannot know to be sure if the harm telling the parents your child will have problems or is at risk is smaller or greater than giving help. So you have this terribly impossible dilemma. But again, for Klinefelter, you can find it by chance when you make amniocentesis. But the huge majority of pregnant women today don't have amniocentesis. So if they have a Klinefelter boy, they'll just think, okay, it's a boy. He's a little slower than other, fine. He grows faster, fine. He has some delayed puberty, happens. Children are not modern. The person can, end their life, maybe they're infertile. Not every infertile man goes to infertility clinics, and most of them blame their partner. Because men don't like to go to infertility clinics. So they may just never know. Seemingly, according to population study, only less than a third of Klinefelter men ever know that they have Klinefelter. They know that they are different, many of them, but they don't know why, and they don't especially want to know probably why. So this is one of the things that I'm very concerned about, but simply there is only one study that worked double blind with controls, and it's a French study of a group I know, Marc de Merck, who look what's happened to women that get prenatal diagnosis of false positive, and then they are told everything is fine. And this is on ultrasound. Happens a lot. And seemingly they have a lot of psychological problems, and they were extremely worried during pregnancy and after pregnancy. Now this is a good case, because this is ultrasound. So ultrasound is relatively good if they see the child or have all the fingers and all the nails and so on. When you go to genetic diagnosis, it's much worse, of course, because if you have not certain genetic diagnosis, it may be something that the child will get later. Even if the child looks perfectly healthy, you don't know if the child will stay perfectly healthy if you have some genetic problem. So we are really in the mess, because you predict even a woman who gets, a lot of women, and this is really a lot, that get the diagnosis something may be wrong, but you don't know what. And this will become, this is my last part of my talk, it's becoming much worse, really much worse, with the new technique the new technique are based in studying deletion. Part of chromosome goes away. It was possible before. They make by banding, by staining, and you could see some of those things before, but it was very rare. Now today we have the new technique. You have comparative genome hybridization, which means that today you don't just count chromosomes. You look on the whole DNA if parts are missing. And you have, so which means that every woman that today gets amniocentesis goes to this, at least in France, and not to karyotype. Not in Brazil, not yet. But in France, practically every woman today who has amniocentesis in a good hospital goes whole genome reading. Now if she goes whole genome reading, you find much more things. Because it's normal, it's whole genome. So you find a lot of things you don't ask, and a lot what you call VUS, variants of unknown signification. I told one of my students, if you have US or something, VUS, something unknown significance, it means the doctor's way of saying, we don't know what the hell is going, but you cannot say, it's on an official paper, we don't know anything. Just, so they did, so you have the acronym, so we have more of these. So this is today, you have a switch to non-invasive prenatal diagnosis of testing fetal DNA in maternal circulation. And this is completely market-derived technology, and it's become very, very powerful in very short time. The first publication of possibilities was 208, which is really not a long time ago. First test, marketed test, was 212. You put on the market today, in good hospitals in the US, practically every woman has the test, although they were not validated. So you say, so it's an industry-based investment. These are the publicity, and they say we have 99.9 accuracy, which is completely false, by the way, completely. It's accuracy, it's sensitivity, not sensibility. We can predict, we we test this anomaly, but we cannot predict the positive predictive, most of positive predictive value. If the condition is 1 in 50 value, so probably, I guess everybody here knows some kind of basic probability statistic. If the condition is frequent, the sensitivity will be close to 1,000. Even if you have 0.1% of error, the positive predictive value will be very weak. So I mean, you get a positive test, but you still have to go amniocentesis, and you have only like 5% or 10% chance that you have the condition, and for very rare condition, even less than this. But still, here you have Brazil, its campaign. What they do, they bought a license. So they send the blood. But seemingly it became very popular in the private clinics. Of course, it's not reimbursed. But instead of going to serum test and then amniocentesis, they say to women, let's start with much more accurate test, which is the blood test, the fetal DNA test. Okay, vamos comenzar por aquí. Vamos. So what's happening now? Because the way the text is calibrated, it's theoretically for down, but it will see things like Turner and Klinefelter. But now not for the 5% of women who have amniocentesis, but for all the pregnant women, which means to increase enormously the detection of the other condition. Now, Klinefelter is not so rare. Klinefelter is more as frequent as down. So you have quite a lot of women will find themselves in really bad dilemmas. What to do with this thing? So in the US, you say it's free market, but some secure stuff. It's a huge competition. The price is 800, 100. It's the same price in Brazil too. Until spring 2014, you have unemployed. It's been down. The two very severe changes in chromosome, which is Edwards and Patel, which are mostly lethal, and sex chromosome anomaly, which is Turner, Klinefelter, triple X, and XXY. So you have already this. From the spring 230, it's a competition. It's like you make competition on iPhones. You add features. So you have beating the concurrents. So you have more features. So you start to make for deletion. In France, it's not offered by National Health Service, but some genetic services propose a woman who are at high risk. In the US, they propose now to every woman, not only for high risk. But in France, they say, madam, you are high risk because of the serum markers. If you don't want to do amniocentesis because of risk, maybe you should do the test. You pay, I don't know, 1,000 euros, so you don't need to do amniocentesis. So some women take it, and some insurance reimburse it. But it is made by genetics in the hospital, so it's usually the geneticists that interpret the results. So it's kind of very mixed situation. Not very good, because of course women who don't have the 1,000 euro will not do it. But in Brazil, I think, well, normal in Brazil, it's like, that's the situation. I mean, no regulation, no control, nobody knows who does anything, as far as I know. I mean, the geneticists, of course, will say, I do it everything fine, but and they say, I do it fine, but I heard that in Minas Gerais, or I heard that in another clinic, and so on and so on. So, you know, that's basically the situation. Everybody I talk always say, no, in our place we do it okay. But of course other people don't. So this is the text for deletion. So they test for some of the deletion is part of the chromosome missing. Some of them are rare, and some of them are quite horrid. Horrid in the sense you have very severe development. I will tell you, some of them are less horrid and not so rare, like the George or Billy Prader. So you have the panorama test with extended panel. If you pay $300 more, you have this. The doctors say, well, you know, you already paid $700. Maybe you pay a little more and be sure you don't get any of these really bad conditions. So this is the list of maternity, which is the most popular. Second moment. This just came out this month. No, it's and they say we should not do it beyond the doubt. And that's what you call wishful thinking. Because they say we should not do it, but in fact they already, a lot of gynecologists propose already. So it is kind of, yes, the National Health System probably will not take the other symptoms. What's happening in private or semi-private setting, at least in the US, the recommendation of the American Society of Clinical Genetics were about the same and more or less 100% disregarded in practice. So this is just, I just took it from a site, which is a geneticist site, by the way. And the woman who's saying, what's happened to women who could do the test? For the deletion and the going to the most terrifying experience of my life, I had Harris to read the SHA with 1 to 19. They will say that the test is 99% sure, but 1 of 19 is the real chances of her to have the deletion. And this is interesting because this is a woman who is a doctor. She's studying for her medical doctor. They say, but I have no idea I was tested for it. So she make a test that she even didn't know that there is a possibility that she gets this type of testing. Or this, you have another. This is interesting because it's a site for professionals, the genetic exchange site, and she say that everybody say I'm desperate, and those are professionals. I don't know what to do. I'm a wreck. So see, it's put a woman in an incredible amount of stress, which of course is not terribly good for them, and probably not terribly good for the future child as well. And this is one of this is one of the worst cases. It is DiGeorge. By the way, I make a bibliography for DiGeorge in Brazil, and I found today DiGeorge is mainly linked with the psychiatric orders. This is the most severe link. You have 25 to 30% risk of schizophrenia. It's not exactly nothing. I mean, schizophrenia is not a smaller risk. In Brazil, all the publications are about the heart defects and pela defects. I found one publication on schizophrenia, and it was posteriori. They say, we make a study, it was a small article in Portuguese, we make a study in a psychiatric ward, and we found 2 patients with DiGeorge out of 500, which is the normal rate. But there is they don't speak at all about the risk, prenatal diagnosis of DiGeorge, that there is a risk of mental disease. This was the case in the 60s and the 70s in Europe. But today, when you discuss in Europe and the US DiGeorge, it's mainly debate on psychiatric risks. Autism, behavioral problems, and the major risk is schizophrenia. So and of course it's not easy. So what you do next? And it changed radically. In 1910s, the recommendation in France were don't test for DiGeorge because it's too difficult. Today the recommendation is test systematically because it's very easy to test for it. I'm not speaking about fetal DNA, I'm speaking about women who have amniocentesis. When you have the whole fetal DNA, they systematically put it in the panel. So they offer this for families with DiGeorge and for ultrasound anomalies. What's happening, DiGeorge is a spectrum. People who have schizophrenia usually don't have children. Because it's a spectrum, some people with DiGeorge are quite okay. Those people have children, but they are not sure if the children will be okay, because the expression is not fixed in families. So in France, is the only study I found on prospective and on prenatal. The majority of the couples decided for abortion. But those are people who either one of the parents have this mutation, is dominant, or they found signs in ultrasound. So you have the two possibilities, either mutation in parent or disease. But this is not on prenatal, on fetal DNA. It is that already they saw something abnormal at ultrasound, the majority of cases. So now imagine it all moving to screening. This is diagnosis. I mean, you have reason, diagnosis because you have a reason to do it. Parent with condition or ultrasound finding. Now, with the new technique, we are going to screening. Probably, at least we'll see what's happened, but there is a serious possibility that every single pregnant woman, or let's say what happened today with serum screening, in France 90% of pregnant women will get the test. So I mean the great majority of diseases will be detected before birth. Again, you are going to say, okay, so I'm just going to say, this is our new fantastic Institute of Maladie Genetique. I just say the genetic is expanding immensely. Genetic tests are expanding immensely. You have this DNA on all the windows, so you know exactly what you are going to find. These are the electrophoresis time. This is our future. Somebody, and we are going to deal with the fallout. How do you say fallout? Como se diga en português fallout? It's like radioactive fallout, you know. All the bad things that fall on your head.